A lot just happened in the NFL. There were some massive performances that you need to know about for your waiver wire. I was pretty surprised to see some of these names still available in over 50% of fantasy leagues, which means there's a good chance at least a few of them are available in yours. And the first name that was shocking to me was Tank Dell, who I know you're watching this and saying, oh, he's not available. Well, just wait. There's going to be some guys here, but he's actually out there in over 55% of fantasy leagues. And here's the deal. The last month of the season before this game has been rough for Tank Dell. He had a nice start to the season with back-to-back 20-point games, but then he was battling some injuries and he just did not look the same. Less than 10 fantasy points in 3 straight games until this past Sunday. Because Tank Dell said, no, enough with that, and became the second highest scoring player on the entire slate. Only his quarterback, CJ Stroud, scored more points at any position. He had 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards on just 8 total touches and 11 targets. Now, if you watch this game, you know that Dell, the rookie, caught the game-winning touchdown at the end, but he was also trusted often on third downs by his quarterback. And in this game, he actually led the entire team in snaps with 61. He ran the most routes and he had the most targets with 11. Compared to the other wide receivers, he had 4 more than the next guy in terms of targets. He stamped himself as one of the best breakout rookies this year because he now has over 20 fantasy points in 3 games, and we're only midway through the season. And look, his quarterback is CJ Stroud, who just set the record for passing yards at 470 this past week. That's not going to happen every week, but we've seen Stroud be good this year, handle the pocket well and pressure, and that's just going to lead to more solid performances for Tank Dell. So if Dell is available in your league, he becomes the #1 waiver wire option. Now, another option who's probably available in your league because he's available in 99% of Yahoo leagues is Keaton Mitchell, the undrafted rookie for the Ravens. He broke out this past Sunday, but we have to break it down because there's a lot of nuance and context that's needed. Mitchell went out there and he took 9 carries for over 130 yards and a touchdown. He had a massive 60-yard run. He had like another 40-yard run in this game. He just showed exactly what he did in college at Eastern Carolina and was explosive. Now, some people might say, oh, it was all garbage time. No, he actually was splitting the carries pretty evenly in the first half with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill before the game became a blowout. And you might say this guy came out of nowhere. He actually started the season on IR and he missed like the first 5 weeks, and then he slowly started to get factored in until he saw a bigger role this week. And the #1 skill for Mitchell is his speed, and he also has burst. He's very elusive. Look at his speed at the combine. According to Player Profiler's workout metrics, 4.37 speed is top 1% of all time, and his burst 88th percentile, that's borderline top 10%. He is very dynamic. And they showed in college because look at this over his final 2 seasons, over 1,100 rushing yards, over 1,400 rushing yards, and when you factor in his receiving yards, last year he had over 1,700 total yards, caught 27 balls, so he shows he has that ability, and 15 touchdowns. Extremely productive. So there's no denying his ability, his explosiveness. He averaged over 7 yards per touch in college, but there was a big issue with him coming out of school, and that would be his size. He's just 5'8" and 179 pounds, which in most seasons is a concern, but this year we're actually seeing smaller players get used more. We're seeing the bias go away from their size. We talk about Devon Achane. Now he has had multiple injuries, so that does factor in a little bit. We talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, who's under 200 pounds. He's productive these last couple of weeks. Even Tank Dell, we just talked about prior to this, at a different position. He's 170 pounds and he's been productive. So it's nice to see that these guys are getting opportunities, and heck, you're at this point in the season where there's not a lot left on your waiver wire. You might as well just stash Keaton Mitchell in a really good offense with a good defense so they will have a lot of leads and see what happens. Now, in previous weeks, we talked about Cade Otton being a solid ad and just somebody you can stream off the waivers, but slowly but surely, he's starting to break out in his second year with the Bucs and Baker Mayfield. Because he was putting up these okay 8-point performances for the tight end position, but never got over 11 fantasy points. Until this past week where Otton goes out there, he scores 2 touchdowns, what could have been the game-winning touchdown if CJ Stroud didn't go off on the game-winning drive, but he scores 2 touchdowns on 9 targets, and Baker Mayfield just kept going his way. Now, Otton's usage all season long has been solid. He's just now starting to earn more targets and get open. Because check this out. Over the last 4 weeks, as you can see in the sample right here on our official data partner, Fantasy Life, he's ran 90% of the routes. It's led to 13% of the targets, which for a tight end who's not one of the more elite guys in the league, or at least not yet, I mean, this is solid usage. You're seeing 6 or more targets in a couple of these games. And here's how this compares to other tight ends in the league. Otton has earned 14% of the Bucs targets this year, which ranks 7th amongst all tight ends. Now, sure, this was one great game. A lot of tight ends pop off just for one game, but his schedule actually looks really good. He has a top 5 tight end schedule the rest of the season. Matchups against the Titans, the Colts, and the Panthers coming up are elite. And then you scroll towards the fantasy playoffs and you get really good matchups against the Panthers as well, and the Packers and the Jaguars, who give it up to tight ends. So at a position where you're just trying to look for like 10 fantasy points a week, if you don't have Travis Kelce, I think Otton's a solid ad. And so is this next wide receiver in deeper leagues. But before we get there, 65% of people who watch this channel aren't subscribed. Again, it just takes 2 seconds. A lot of people don't know. To hit the subscribe button helps me as we push towards 100,000 subscribers. Crazy number. Cannot wait for that. And it lets you see my future content more easily. Now, that wide receiver worth an ad is available in 99% of leagues, and it's Noah Brown, another Houston Texans wide receiver. Now, he was sort of the forgotten man after signing with the team this offseason as a veteran, formerly on the Cowboys, a nice run blocker. This guy was going to be involved, but he got hurt week 1. And then he returned in week 6, and a lot of people just forgot about him. Now, we were talking about him on Twitter. We were talking about him on this channel, in the Discord, but you can see right here, here, 73% of the routes, and then after a bye week, 89% of the routes with this team. It's worth noting that in week 8, there was no Robert Woods here, but in week 6, there was no Tank Dell. So it was like, okay, what is his role actually going to be when everybody's healthy? We'll still have to wait and see since Robert Woods has remained out, but Woods is older, hasn't been as efficient as Noah Brown just was this past week. When he put up on his 6 targets, caught 100% of them, has now caught 100% of his targets the last 2 weeks, 150 yards, a touchdown, goes over 30 fantasy points in leagues that have bonuses for 100 yards or massive touchdowns, because yeah, he had a 70-yard score in this game. Now, of course, there's Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, all these guys here, and you're not going to have every week nearly 500 passing yards for CJ Stroud. But this is a guy who has now shown an ability to earn targets in back-to-back weeks and is finally looking healthy. And look, at this point in the season, you'll take some sort of upside like this in a nice offense. If you're not familiar with Noah Brown's game, I mean, he was never an elite player, but in 2022, he had over 500 receiving yards and 40 catches for the Cowboys, and this got him a solid contract this past offseason, about $3 million on a 1-year deal, sort of a prove-it deal, do it again with the Houston Texans. Now, you have to set your expectations properly. You can't just start this guy every single week. There'll be some bye weeks where he'll help you out, but if something happens to Tank Dell, gets injured again, Nico Collins, he's going to fill in right away in this powerful offense and be great. Now, speaking of a guy who has filled in and has been great, let's talk about Demario Douglas, who is still available, the New England Patriots' #1 receiver in over 80% of fantasy leagues. Now, the context heading into this week was that Kendrick Bourne's done for the year, and Devontae Parker was out with a concussion, meaning the 6th-round rookie Demario Douglas was going to profile out as the #1 receiver. And that is exactly what happened. As he led the team playing 53 snaps, he ran 38 routes, 7 more than any other receiver, and earned 7 targets, was tied with Juju Smith-Schuster for the most on the team, but his were more downfield, which leads to more upside. Now, the production wasn't elite given the matchup where the Commanders give up the most points to the wide receiver position, but he was very close to a big game. I mean, he had 5 catches for 55 yards. He was just missed on another massive play that probably would have ended up being a touchdown. And the encouraging sign was that not only did he play in all 11 personnel sets, the formation where there's 3 wide receivers on the field, but he played in the far majority, only came off the field for about 8 snaps in 12 personnel where there was only 2 receivers on the field. And this matters because more weeks than not, the Patriots are going to want to be a run-heavy team based on the lack of weapons they have in the receiving game. Very quietly heading into this game, the rookie ranked 28th in yards per route run, meaning he was the 28th most efficient wide receiver in the league, and he's still available in over 80% of fantasy leagues. After this week, this is only going to go up a little bit. So in 3 weeks, since he's seen more usage, he's averaging about 20% of the targets, and now Kendrick Bourne is done for the year. I want to add Demario, especially in all 12-team leagues. And I also want to keep an eye on Ty Chandler, who's available in 99% of fantasy leagues. He's the Vikings' new RB2. And this is because Cam Akers has reportedly torn his other Achilles. This is terrible. He now has 2 Achilles tears in like the last 2.5 years. This is absolutely brutal. We hope that Akers recovers quickly. I mean, this is the worst injury that you can sustain. It seems like it's gotten a little bit better, but the rehab is brutal, and now he has to do it again. And with Akers being done for the year, Ty Chandler will take on the RB2 work for this team, and he was the backup before they traded for Cam Akers, playing about 15% of the snaps in this offense. Now, like Keaton Mitchell we talked about earlier, Ty Chandler is extremely explosive and fast. This is his speed score from 2 years ago when they drafted him. You can see right here, 98th percentile in terms of his 4.3 time, yet again here, is top 2% of all time. Now, Madison will still be the running back 1 in an offense led by Joshua Dobbs, which might not be great, although this past weekend it was okay, but we have to still keep an eye on Chandler because he came into the season as a real threat to take the work from Alexander Madison. He had a great preseason. He was the #1 elusive back in terms of how you can break tackles and pick up more yards after that, according to Pro Football Focus. And he was injured his rookie year, but in his final year of college, when he was actually a workhorse and saw usage, over 1,300 yards and flashed his explosiveness. And that explosiveness is key because last year Madison was dead last in the NFL in explosiveness, and this year he's bottom 10 in the league. So look, Chandler's not going to come in and be the starter this next week, but there's a chance that he could see his role grow like some of these other rookies that we're interested in having on our depth charts, like Zach Charbonnet heading into the fantasy playoffs, because if something happens to the starter in front of them, they're going to be a league winner. Now, speaking of potential league winners, that's what Sam Howell has been these past couple of weeks, and he's available in over 50% of leagues. If you don't have one of the stud quarterbacks right now, you might need a guy, and this could be him, because he continued to flash his honestly borderline top 10 quarterback upside this past week for fantasy. Howell went out there against a bottom 10 Patriots defense that is just banged up in the secondary, and he posts 22 fantasy points solid, another 300+ yard game, and continues to have that sneaky rushing upside for 27 yards. Heading into this game, he ranked 6th in the NFL in passing yards, and after this game, he'll now rank top 5 in the NFL, and there's a reason for him getting all these yards. He has been okay in terms of efficiency here and there when he has time to throw, but there's a bigger reason. His team, the Washington Commanders, right now rank #1 in the NFL in pass rate. They have passed 72% of the time this year, so they're just throwing the ball nonstop. He had 45 attempts in this pass game, so even if you're not efficient, you're just getting so much volume that you can still put up production. And because of that, he's finished with a lot of top 15 finishes and a lot of top 10 finishes. You can see right here, he started the season with back-to-back top 15 finishes. Then he goes on a 3-game stretch, 13th, 5th, 8th. Then you scroll a little bit more, he was the number 1 quarterback last week, and this past week he was a top 10 quarterback yet again for fantasy football. So pick him up if you need a quarterback and you just had a ton of injuries to work through, like Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith not producing, and even Kirk Cousins. Now, speaking of injuries, Zay Jones is somebody who's kind of been forgotten about due to his injuries. He's available in 80% of leagues right now. He's coming out of the bye week and should be playing next week. Now, here's the deal. He only has 8 catches this year for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns, but that's because of his injuries. In week 1, Zay Jones had a very solid game, earning 23% of the targets, was like 15 plus fantasy points, but then look at this. Week 2, he gets injured, only runs 62% of the routes, misses some time, comes back in week 5, gets injured again after running just 51% of the routes, only having like 23 yards. He does score a touchdown in that game in London, but we haven't seen him since. And without Jones for the Jaguars passing attack, it's been less efficient and there's been more attention on Calvin Ridley. Ridley has been held under 40 yards in 5 games without Zay this year. Now, Zay Jones actually started the season as the wide receiver 2 in this offense. It was him and Calvin Ridley out there for 2 wide receiver sets, and Christian Kirk was only playing out of the slot. Now, Christian Kirk has been solid this year, maybe the best receiver on this team for the most part of the season for Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see what happens here in terms of the rotation. But once Zay Jones is out there, he's going to play at least 70% of the routes in a solid offense. And let's not forget, last year he was a top 30 fantasy option, and now he's on the waiver wires. He had 121 targets. That will definitely go down with the addition of Calvin Ridley to this offense, but he's still somebody that is a flex play, a wide receiver 2, a wide receiver 3, depending on your league type, and he's out there in this many leagues. So look to add him before week 10 and before your friends remember that he's coming back soon. And also consider adding Josh Palmer and just throwing him in your IR spot. The news came out that he's going to end up on IR after not practicing all of last week, and that's a concern. But because of this, a ton of people are dropping him, and it makes sense. On the bye weeks, there's 4 weeks. You might not make the playoffs, so you just got to get somebody who's going to help your team and get you towards the postseason. But if you're in a position to actually pick him up, hold him in your IR spot, and you're probably going to make your playoffs, he's a good option to add, because look at this. Before this injury, weeks 4, 6, and 7, when there was no Mike Williams, you see week 4, 35% of the targets, running 97% of the routes. Week 6 and 7, 100% of the routes, and earning 21 and 25% of the targets. When he's healthy and out there as the wide receiver 2, he was producing. And here's another major reason why you want him. By the time that he can actually come back, he's going to have unbelievable matchups. He gets the Patriots and Broncos. These are bottom 5 to bottom 10 secondaries. And then to open the fantasy playoffs, the Raiders, bottom half of the league secondary, the Bills that has been banged up right now and they don't look that great on defense, and in the championship game, the Broncos again. So Palmer went from somebody that was on about 70 to 80% of rosters to now being available in over 50% of leagues. Add him, stash him on your IR spot. And also go grab the fantasy blueprint as you're trying to push towards your fantasy playoffs right now. This will help you every single day of the week. I will be sending out these tools for you. Waiver wire tiers and rankings, rest of season rankings for trades, projections and rankings for that specific week, and the game by game matchup notes. Now here's an example of those matchup notes. It's every single matchup. You could filter it by position if you want. This is from a previous week for the Chiefs. You can see the quarterback, offensive versus defensive line advantage, his advantage versus the secondary, their weaknesses there, something about the wide receivers, cornerback, wide receiver matchups, the size, what the cornerback has given up, what the wide receiver has done that year based on efficiency. This is just a small tidbit. And the blueprint is extremely easy to get. Over 4,000 people are currently using it. You just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below. That will take you to this page where you follow 2 simple steps. And here's the deal. I know you might be saying, oh, but the season's half over. This is not worth it. No, I would say that it is, because it's only $5 for the entire season, no matter when you sign up, just $5. Not for the week, not for the month, the entire season to help you make your fantasy playoffs. And if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, as you can see right here, I just refund that $5. So this is literally risk-free. If you have a bad injury to your team, if you think it's a close call, it doesn't matter. I'll just give you back your $5. So to get instant access to your blueprint today, just scan the QR code on the screen or click that link, beautiful people, in the description below. All right, now let's talk about a tight end who's a solid add, because he's still available in over 70% of leagues, even though he's a top 10 tight end after his performance this past week, where Jonnu Smith continued to be dominant with the ball in his hands, an elite athlete who put up over 100, or he put up exactly 100 yards for the first time this year, and a touchdown, goes over 20 points. And in Jonnu's first game with Heineke, his role remained the same. You can see right here, Pitts only played 1 more snap. They both had 5 targets, and like most of the season, Jonnu was more effective on those targets. He entered this game ranking 7th in yards per route run. That's your efficiency amongst tight ends. And after this game, he's easily going to move up, probably closer to the top 5. So we know this Falcons offense. They run a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the field, and that's going to lead to some opportunities, especially based on how they're using him. They used him. They gave him a goal line carry this past week for Jonnu Smith. He's worth an add. And so is Elijah Mitchell as we creep towards the fantasy playoffs. Maybe you know where you stand right now. If you're in a spot where you feel like, okay, I'm probably going to make the playoffs, or I have a good chance to, you should start padding your roster for the postseason and adding league winners, potential league winners like Elijah Mitchell. Because since the 49ers went on the bye week, Mitchell was dropped in a lot of leagues because people added a player who was playing that week just so they can fill in and get some points. But Mitchell was the only running back to see a snap the past 2 weeks behind Christian McCaffrey. Now, it wasn't great. You can see right here, just 8% and 11% of the snaps. We know McCaffrey is getting fed so far this season. But Mitchell in 2021, before McCaffrey got there as a rookie, was trusted by Kyle Shanahan for the full workload and had over 1,000 total yards. And based on how Christian McCaffrey is being used right now, just getting absolutely fed, if he was to miss some time, especially in the fantasy playoffs where this could open up league winning potential for Elijah Elijah Mitchell, you'd probably expect Mitchell just to slide into that full-time role. Now you might say, oh, but Jordan Mason split the backfield when McCaffrey left early in the previous week. That was because Mitchell entered that week with an injury and was limited. So these are the types of guys, the Zach Charbonnets, the Tyjae Spears, the Elijah Mitchells that you want to add because they would get a full-time role if something happened to the guy ahead of them. Add Mitchell. And consider adding Rondale Moore, especially in deeper leagues where he's available in nearly 70% of leagues. And look, we want this third-year speedster because of the fact that Kyler Murray is expected to return this upcoming week. And Rondale was very productive with Kyler Murray last season. He averaged 5.6 catches when healthy and ranked 17th in wide receiver points. Now, the concern with Rondale Moore is just his injuries. You date back to college. He has a lot of injuries for a guy who's only been in the league for 3 years, had hamstring issues in college that made him miss about 10 games. Then you get to the NFL and he has some ankle sprains, hamstrings, groins, basic wide receiver injuries, but he's had them a lot. But if we put these concerns to the side, you're getting a really dynamic player on the waiver wire who's proven to be a top 20 receiver when Kyler Murray is healthy and he's healthy, and now Kyler's back. All right, now let's talk about some players who are trending right now on the waiver wire, some guys we haven't already talked about. 29% rostered, so he's available in about 80% of leagues or 70% of leagues. Luke Musgrave for the Packers had a nice game, found the end zone. The Packers offense is not going to be great. Jordan Love is not going to be great, but they are utilizing Luke Musgrave in the middle of the field more this past week. Now that he's healthy, that's good to see. A guy we just talked about is Kyler Murray, who is expected to make his return. They did not want him out there in a tough matchup against the Browns this past week. He'll have a little bit of an easier matchup in his debut, and Kyler Murray averages 21 points per game when healthy. That's top 5 all time. I'll also call out that Pat Fryermuth's available in 75% of leagues because he's on IR for the Steelers, the tight end, but when he's out there, he's an every down tight end and a fantastic player, the former second-round pick. Another fellow worth an add is Leonard Fournette. This is similar to like the Elijah Mitchell play here. It's just like, okay, they added him. Was it just to directly replace Damian Harris, or will we see more Leonard Fournette as he learns the playbook in future weeks, and will he become more involved and be the playoff Lenny that we've seen in previous seasons? This is somebody that's worth a stash if you have the bench spot. Jalen Tolbert is worth a stash in very deep leagues. He's available in 99.8% of leagues right now. This past week, he saw more usage than Michael Gallup, who had a bad drop in this game. Brandon Cooks, who's just kind of been like a possession receiver, hasn't been able to do much downfield. We saw Tolbert have a big play to get them into the red zone and then finish that drive with a nice touchdown catch against the Eagles. 5 targets were the second most on this team for the wide receivers, somebody worth adding. And a final guy worth mentioning is Michael Wilson because he's the biggest receiver. He's the big boundary guy on the outside, could be a red zone receiver for Kyler Murray now that he is going to be out there. This would be somebody who kind of takes the place of DeAndre Hopkins' role in this offense in previous seasons. Obviously a totally different wide receiver, and we can't compare the two in terms of skill and talent, just what their role will be. So this is everything you need to know for the waiver wire before week 10. But as you know, this is only one way to improve your team. The other way is through trades, and your deadline might be coming up. So this video, once it's posted, will pop up here and show you exactly who you should be trading for before week 10. Before you go, if you are one of the 65% of people not subscribed, just take 2 more seconds of your time to hit that as we push towards 100,000 subscribers. I appreciate you all a ton, and I'll see you in the next one.